Hello, everybody. It's Max with Crypto Talk now. The Terra Rebels have released a roadmap on Medium that gives you a detailed outline on what is going on with Luna Classic. In fact, Edward Kim of the Terra Rebels released this just a few hours ago. So, with that said, we're going to take a deep dive into just that. So, as you can see right here, this comes straight from that Medium source. And it starts off with this right here: burn and rebuild Luna Classic. Now, of course, some of you guys may have seen little snippets in regards to this, but here at Crypto Talk now, we're going to basically do a full in-depth piece on this particular article that was released, like I just mentioned, a few hours ago. So, burn and rebuild Luna Classic. As we know, on September 15th, Terra Classic governance proposal 4661 passed with a 99.88% yes vote to enable the 1.2% tax and burn on all transactions on chain. The parameter was successfully activated on the following epoch of the blockchain on September 20th. Since then, we have burned over 2 billion Luna Classic in the past week, compared to the 4 billion in the past 4 months. Pretty big. In the following days, as centralized exchanges and decentralized apps adjust to the change, we will continue to monitor the burn and share the results. But one thing to note and celebrate is, like it mentions, Luna Classic is now officially deflationary. And I like some of the key highlights that they have right here in that regard. I'm going to blow this up a little bit more. And as you can see, it mentions on this Medium piece that, like you see this giant number. It's basically 6,901,000,000,000. Okay, 737,775,755 Luna Classic. Just a double check that it should be 369. Yep, just that 6.9 trillion. Right, and of course it shows a minus 530, a little over 5.3 million. In that latest candlestick. Going a little bit more further, it mentions looking back from where we started, like it says right here, we had a few, of course, major milestones, including the installation of that V22 and the delivery of that 1.2% tax burn. It goes on to mention also this key highlight: we have successfully transitioned from the emergency phase to the rebuild stage. Here we outline 3 major objectives that they're working on: rebuild the algorithmic fungible token. Oh boy, that term algorithmic, right? Rebuild the project ecosystem and rebuild independence. Then it goes on to mention rebuild the algorithmic fungible token, AFT. Let's face it, we're going to hear this term thrown out quite a bit, quite often. As noted by Alex Forshaw, the past Terra swap mechanism was able to reduce the Luna supply by approximately 50% over an 18-month period. There were obvious flaws in the previous system, leading to the hyperinflation of Luna and the collapse of UST. But nonetheless, it is likely our best shot in drastically reducing the total supply. And I like how they worded that, because when you see the whole term algorithmic, you think about like where we got into trouble to begin with when it came to the collapse of UST. The whole term of algorithmic stablecoin, which is basically now the unstable stablecoin, or the not so stable stablecoin of Luna UST. So, we see some of these statements like there was obvious flaws in the previous system. Yep, collapse UST. But nonetheless, it's likely our best shot in drastically reducing the total supply. Again, that roadmap to show you and give you a breakdown of how we achieve some of these crazy price predictions, and that roadmap, like I mentioned, on how we get to there. Because, it's one thing to mention some of these things, and then it's just, let's face it, some of these cryptos have hopium, right? We don't need any hopium. We just need realistic numbers and a realistic path forward. Like, here's how we do it. Here's the tools that we have. Here's what we implemented. Here's the proposals. I like this outline, and I think you will appreciate it as well. It says that there are several stages to the rebuilding of the market swap. The first is the debt to equity swap in order to repeg the AFT to $1. most people have heard, of course, government quote bailouts, right? Um, that was a big topic basically in the last recession of between 2007 2009, where like it states, some entity steps in and covers the bill. And then this particular highlight: while we could seek a bailout from an external investor or entity, the community would then be beholden to them. And I think that's a key highlight: beholden to them, whether we like it or not. I'm glad that they outlined that. Decisions about the future of the chain and the AFT would likely be governed by this entity, thus centralizing decisions and power. And again, we don't want to be, we don't, want Luna Classic to be centralized at all. Yeah, it's on centralized exchanges and so on, but there's a big difference compared to what we want to see happen here. We want to be decentralized, deflationary. Okay. So it says, therefore, the ideal situation is similar in principle to the burn tax. Everyone in the community can shoulder the burden. This process would either require a certain percent dilution or community fundraising, but would immediately repay the AFT to $1. Yeah. And most importantly, provide substantial immediate collateralization of the AFT. At the time of the debt restructure, the market swap would still be disabled. The repay team, led by Forshaw, are working on a significantly strengthened capital control system to dramatically reduce the odds of another death spiral. Good. These are the things we want to hear. We don't want to hear anything about a repeat of what happened with the collapse of UST. When they throw in the term of algorithmic, I mean, if anything, it should definitely alert you. A lot of people just run away from it to begin with. They don't even want to hear anymore. Right? So I'm glad they did, of course, this particular outline. A large on-chain programmatic reserve, meanwhile, would be designed to retire the entire circulating supply of USTC at a volume-weighted average price of around 50 cents. Okay? So this would not shield Luna Classic holders from significant losses in the event of a systemic crisis, but it would make a hyperinflationary scenario theoretically impossible. Now think about that for a moment. The timeline of this plan takes place in several pieces, with the first steps occurring before the end of 2022. I'm glad they outlined, of course, that as well, because some of these dates, like when they state things like, there's some content creators that stated, we get to some of these goals of $1, in 200 days and so on. And when you looked at the time that they made those particular videos, nothing against what they're saying, but it's like, okay, that's sometime in April. So clearly that's beyond 2022. Says stay tuned for more details as they become available, of course. But there's, of course, more that we're going to cover here. Again, this is a deep dive into it. I don't want to just give you guys just little snippets of it, because if anything, like, we gave you guys some snippets on the live show. And by the way, we appreciate everybody that's been watching that. But I love this statement: rebuild the project ecosystem. On our live show, we basically talked about that a few times. And it's just that, if, we can have a good handful of solid projects from the Terra Luna Classic ecosystem, I think it could be really, really huge for Luna Classic. Because yes, all the the focus, of course, is how can we get USTC to repay to $1. We showed you basically in a previous video. Of course, shout out to one of our Crypto Talk Now reporters, Mike Cornwell, who showed you in a detailed video, which he did a very good job of detailing how that's done through the USTC wormhole, right? But we also want to show you, like we mentioned also in the past, how we get there with their ecosystem. Because if anything, when you think about, for instance, metaverse, right? That's a term that's been thrown around for the longest time now, for well over a year. But if Luna Classic ends up having a really decent or premier metaverse platform, it doesn't have to be like, the standalone cream of the crop. But if it ends up being a place in which there's a lot of volume of people going into that and they're enjoying that particular one that's part of our ecosystem. That's a lot of eyeballs. That's a lot of transactions. That's a lot of volume coming into Luna Classic. So again, it says in our previous timeline, we had proposed to explore technological parity with Luna version 2 sometime mid 2023 in order to facilitate, of course, the growth of the utility. We, and this is another key highlight, are excited to share that this has been fast-tracked. We are implementing this now. There are a series of fortunate events that have made this, of course, possible. Like I mentioned right here, inter-block communication. Back in May, when the DPEG happened, the inter-blockchain communication IBC protocol was shut down between Osmosis and, of course, Terra. This software patch was delivered in a permanent way, meaning the re-enablement of IBCs would not be a trivial flip of the switch. And I know here at Crypto Talk now, we always talk about the flip of the switch. When we're talking about flip of the switch, we're mainly focusing on the ISO 222 compliant tokens / coins, XRP, Quant, XDC, XLM, those type of things, not this particular thing. So as time went on and the recovery of Luna Classic became a reality, users with trapped liquidity, which is about 41 billion Luna Classic and 158 million USTC, vocalized their desire to reopen the IBC channel. Several weeks ago, Osmosis Grants reached out to Jacob Gadikian, renowned Cosmos developer. By the way, look into Cosmos, it's very underrated in my opinion, to assist with the effort. Since then, we have been in close communication with Jacob and his team. Not only will Jacob be assisting with the reopening of IBCs, but will also, quote, clean up the chain. As our last meeting a week ago, we could expect these changes within the next few weeks. That being said, there's a significant amount of testing and migration that needs to be done, like it mentions, so the deployment of the changes is still several months away. And of course, there was the tweet in regards to all that. You can read more about that right there. And you know what? It's just that. I mean, when we go a little bit more further, it gives a little bit more detail. But check out this. It says other changes include moving to full compatibility with Cosmos version 45.8 and Tendermint version 0.34. This is huge because if you think about it, like if you ever looked into the likes of, for instance, Kava, they had that whole thing where they bring in Cosmos, right? I know it's kind of a different comparison, but again, if you know what I'm talking about in that regard, then this makes a lot of sense. So it says this would bring the Luna Classic chain on par with Luna V2, enabling the project decentralized apps to develop once and deploy twice. With the technological gap closed, we expect to dramatically increase the number of projects supported in the Classic ecosystem. And it's just that, projects supported in the Classic ecosystem, building that ecosystem and then having it sustained. And if anything, attracting more and more to the ecosystem. Again, it's not just focusing on, they have a crypto tunnel vision, if you will, when it comes to just USTC. That's our only utility. Again, we want to see USTC, repay, and I think it will. I think we'll definitely get there. But again, it's also just that ecosystem, right? All we need is just a good handful of ones to do really, really well. And I think we'll get there. So it says right here, there is one catch. Many third parties that have offered help have expressed that we should be completely independent of Terraform Labs. And I would have to agree with that. I think we're already beyond the point where this is not attached to TFL at all. And basically the Terra Rebels have, basically made Luna Classic, community driven all the way. And if anything, we want to continue in that light. We want to be on that path and continue to be on that path. So it says this leads us to our next objective, right? And I will read this from the particular tweet. So it states, from Jacob Gadikian, before digging into the task, we need to get a summary of the situation from one of the rebels. Then we will make Cosmos IBC packets fly. And I think, again, when that happens, Yeah, there's all sorts of talk about the burns and so on. But again, this is another huge catalyst and make big news. I wouldn't mind. I mean, I should say I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't be surprised if you see like Cosmos start appearing on quite a few different content creators' thumbnails. The whole thing with that. Don't be surprised because it's going to be coming. That statement, making that package fly, I couldn't agree more. So a little bit more on this. It says one thing I would strongly encourage is that the Terra Rebels and Luna Classic DAO to do is to formally sever ties with the Terra Money GitHub org. The way to do this is using a government's proposal that specifies the GitHub org as Terra Rebels and should contain a commit hash that is unique to the repo. Now, some of this may be kind of like above your head in that regard, but again, if you do kind of understand some of this, it would make a little bit more sense with some of these statements, right? So, this next segment states rebuild independence. And I'm glad that this was mentioned because sometimes people feel as though that Do Kwon is still attached to Luna Classic, and that could be furthermore from the truth. So it states on September 14th, a warrant was issued to South Korean authorities for the rest of Do Kwon and 5 other members of Terraform Labs. You either know about this or you don't. It's okay. But again, it's kind of like reiterating some of the history that's happened since, of course, the depegging of UST, how we went from Terra Luna to Terra Luna Classic, so on and so forth. So it says, naturally, many questions regarding the relationship between TFL and Do Kwon and Luna Classic were raised, and concerns about any connections were voiced. Similarly, Jacob Gadikian, I can never pronounce that 100% right, would conditionally help us if we stand as an independent blockchain. While the Luna Classic blockchain is completely independent, listen to this, and no one person or entity has the control or authority to dictate the fate of this chain, hence Do Kwon, there are some current off-the-blockchain dependencies that we would like the community to be aware of. Again, good, because we want the transparency. At the end of the day, it's Luna Classic. There was a state of time where a lot of people just looked at this as being a crypto lottery ticket, and we went from that to like legitimate investment, right? So I'm glad that they're definitely addressing some of these things, but like it mentions, and offers some ideas on moving towards full decentralization. There's this light client daemon, which is LCD. Many people do not know what happened behind the scenes on the evening of August 26th when the community code revived the blockchain. Again, more of that transparency. You may feel as though, well, I'm only interested in the burns and so on. You want to know something? When it comes to your cryptos, why not try to do a little bit more research and find out all these things that you should want to know more about? So it goes on and says, a few days before, Vegas had a conversation with a member of TFL where they told him that TFL policy was to sunset support for the public infrastructure supporting Luna Classic. This was no surprise. Their focus was building on Luna V2, and thus public-facing endpoints like the LCD would eventually shut down. Vegas was also told that the cost of running this infrastructure was hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. Again, another key highlight. We brainstormed some ideas, but since the LCD was still up and running for the foreseeable future and August 26th was right around the corner, we continue to focus our efforts on obtaining 2/3 voting power necessary to upgrade the blockchain. On top of that, it states on the morning of August 26th, 8 hours before the blockchain breaking change, we received the news that TFL would not upgrade the LCD endpoint. This would not break down the blockchain, but it would require major updates to the functionality of Terra Station. And of course, we see everything that's going on with Terra Station right now, and it's great, the staking and so on. States, I had secured a full node sync to the blockchain and could use that temporarily as a fallback with some very inconvenient workarounds in the existing app. Also, my LCD node was not production ready, had limited resources, and certainly could not support the nearly 1.5 million operations needed to be serviced per hour. And then, of course, there's this little snippet. I will zoom in a little bit on that. Excuse me for a moment. And it states, "Dear all," of course, this is from Edward Kim of the Terra Rebels. It is very unlikely that the existing TFL-like client endpoints will be upgraded before the consensus breaking block. Please make note for a backup LCD. And of course, it's just a little bit more of a reflection. But if anything, it says in addition to decentralized apps and smaller central exchanges that point to lcd.terra.dev to query information about the blockchain would no longer work properly. And again, I know this is kind of like a big, long, deep dive, but I wanted to mention some of this because I feel basically like this. Like I mentioned before, you want to know a little bit more about all this, and why not? If they're being this transparent, might as well read about it. So like it says right here, in a last-ditch effort, Vegas attempted to contact Do Kwon, and Rex YZ contacted Luna Classic now. Each reached out to their respective contacts. Within the next hour, we received word that Paul Kim from Terraform Labs upgraded the public-facing infrastructure. Only an hour later, governance was restored and everyone was able to interface seamlessly with the blockchain. Today, it is crystal clear that we needed to host our own LCD and transition off TFL's LCD endpoint. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, that was a really good step in the right direction. Over the past month, Terra Rebels and Terra C Vita have been gathering information about traffic, hosting, and cost to run our own endpoints. For the short term, we are looking at backup LCD and have gained information and support from validators, Allnodes, Sutton, and Autism Staking. Backup nodes with redundancy and load balancing are in the final testing phase, but should be production ready soon. When announced, we will encourage everyone to transition to the new community-owned and run LCD. Thank you, of course, to the validators for supporting this initiative. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? So, in regards to the Terra Station wallet, and I get it, this is kind of long, but man, they did such a great job of listening and all, and I just wanted to share it with everybody. So it says Terra Station Wallet. Terra Station Wallet is another critical application that we do not have full control over. This was evidenced last week when our front-end team needed to correct some failed gas transactions on the platform due to the tax upgrade. I don't know if you happen to remember some of this. We have been exploring different options, including creating our own, quote, Rebel Station wallet, as well as investigating third-party wallets popular on the Cosmos ecosystem. For example, Kepler wallet. And I think, in the future, you'll be hearing a lot about the Terra Station wallet when it's all said and done. This right here, it says we have working prototypes and builds of each of these options, but will require further integration testing before they are ready for production. Then there's this. Yeah, I am going to mention it. Fund the community pool. A lot of times I hear people mention about, hey, Max, did you hear about this whole thing with this community pool? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit, but, they'll ask me, well, did you take a deeper dive into it? And I'm like, no, not quite. But now we're here. Why won't we? Fund the community pool. Finally, independence comes at a cost. The backup full node will require funding to continue to operate, especially if it becomes the primary node and needs to service a significant portion of the decentralized apps and centralized exchange traffic. Again, I know that so many of us, we want everything to go a certain way, kind of like we wanted, Binance to have, be 100% on board for the 1.2% tax burns both on-chain and off, but at the same time, you can't have everything your way. I think this is another example of this, and basically what I'm stating is, like it mentions, it takes funding to operate these things. Just like I host a game server, right, an actual machine on a co-location from a gaming community. that costs money. It's like, it's not, remotely close to some of the huge costs of what they got going here. But the point I'm trying to make is everything costs money. And if we're hosting things on these particular services, we got to get something in which, is community driven. Like, so I imagine, like what mentions right here, they're going to do certain things to accomplish just that. And it goes on into detail and basically says that. So it says we need to attract more developers to support the chain and prevent talent from leaving. If anything, it's just that. Prevent basically any talent from leaving. You don't want to give anybody an excuse to just keep bouncing back and forth. That's not what we want. Yeah, we had some projects come back into the space or in regards to Luna Classic, but as far as like that, having an influx of people leaving, you definitely want to, to not have that happen, because if anything, that is what it's not the path that we want going forward. It says we need to incentivize projects and decentralized apps to bring their ideas and build a rich, thriving ecosystem of activity to the chain. The easiest funding mechanism, like it mentions, just a parameter change, is to take a small portion of the burn to fund the community pool, and already we are seeing spontaneous discussions around governance to raise funds for the community pool. Preliminary budgets show that even a small 5 to 10% redirection will be more than sufficient to build our reserves. I don't think that's a big deal. Some people, of course, are going to scream that this is just too ridiculous and so on. But in reality, if it's for the greater cause, then we want that. And if that helps us achieve some of these price levels that we're all asking for, let's just, can we concentrate on even getting to a penny yet? Yeah, I think we should. And then from there, some of these other targets, 50 cents, a dollar, and so on. I think this is also the path of getting to just that. In closing, I know that was a long thing, but again, guys, this is a deep dive. It wasn't supposed to be a quick 5-minute video. It says, in closing, I would like to share our vision and major milestones we would like to achieve in the next year. Please note that the directions presented here are all proposed changes. Just like the proposals that have been existing on Luna Classic for the last few months, some of them make it, some of them don't. But it's just that, proposed changes. States any alteration to the blockchain will require the community to pass a successful governance vote, just like I mentioned. Our roadmap is accessible to our website, which is linked below. And guys, it's just basically that, it's like we've seen, I should say, all these things happening. This, of course, is the current roadmap. I'm sure they're going to, of course, update this in the future. But there you have it. I mean, what a nicely detailed roadmap. I mean, look at all the projects out there that have a supposed roadmap and they give you a gist of, what happened with the history of it and so on. And it's just like, it's not even that impressive. This, to me, is so transparent, so detailed, that I think more and more, content creators should talk more about this. And yeah, it's quite the read, but you know what? Like I've always mentioned, especially on the live show, it's just part of doing your own research. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do your own research? And I'll be coming back to this. I might even bookmark this in that regard, because I mean, these are things that could be basically updated. So before we completely end it, I want to show you guys this just real quick. It says, for instance, and of course this is from Classic Crypto. It says, we did it. Coinbase listing on Luna Classic now has over 50,000 tweets. In fact, it's like 50,300 currently. And, before Coinbase didn't really trend for the longest time. Now it's trending, and it's due to Luna Classic. Again, like we mentioned before, when it comes to supply and demand, those are the key factors, supply, demand, and on top of that, if it's trending. Now Coinbase is trending. Again, to create tremendous amount of demand for what? Luna Classic. Currently speaking, we're seeing Luna Classic on CoinMarketCap. I mean, yeah, it's only up a little bit of around like 2%, but wait for the European markets to wake up by the time, this video is put out. Um, I think it's going to be big. I think it's going to be big buying opportunities for the European markets here shortly, and then also especially for Asia Pacific regions. Looking at KuCoin real quick, I wanted to show this because I mean, we did another video, of course not remotely as long as this one, but there's some indicators that we basically listed for you guys. One in particular is this huge green candle, and again, it's another really impressive pennant, and that is, in my opinion, another indicator of a massive breakout that's going to happen. And we're not the only ones that feel this way. Will it happen within the next 12 hours or later today? I'm thinking it very well could be. I'm not a fortune teller, obviously. But, one thing, again, I always mention this on the live show, it seems as though Thursday night going into Fridays for whatever reason, and then by the time we do the show, we see the market moving and moving well. I wouldn't be surprised by the time of the show tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, if you see this actually fully take off. Not necessarily parabolic, but some really, really nice pumps, to say the least. So, guys, that is it in regards to this long, deep dive on that Medium post. I thought it was personally great because my attitude is, you know what? We love seeing this type of thing going on, and I'm sure you do as well. So if you haven't done so already, like, comment, and subscribe. Smash that, well, I already said smash that like, but anyway. Check out, of course, our live show, the Max and Larry show of Crypto Talk Now, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Literally every single day of the week since April 18th when we first started all this together. Be on the lookout for more and more recorded videos. I can't thank you guys enough for sticking around this late into, of course, the recording from beginning to end. If you jumped around, that's of course fine. But that said, everybody, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.